presidential
here we
campaign
go.
live at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee.
8 Republican candidates have qualified and have chosen to
like
be
an NFL
here
playoff game.
on our debate stage tonight. They are here to lay out their vision for America, the battle as they battle for the GOP nomination.
Who the hell is that guy?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Brett Baer. This is the very same stage on which the Republican choice for president will accept the party's nomination next summer. The 8 contenders are positioned by the order they sit in the polls, with the highest polling candidates in the middle standing center stage. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Former Vice President Mike Pence.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Krispy Kreme.
Carolina Senator
They
Tim
booed him.
Scott.
Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson.
And
looks
North
weird.
Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
Who is that guy? Never seen him.
Some ground rules for tonight. We'll ask the questions, and
Where's
then candidates
Trump?
get 1 minute to answer. If someone is singled out, you get 30 seconds to respond. And when the time runs out, we all will hear this. Very pleasant.
So tonight, these candidates have a big opportunity to break out of the pack and to explain why they are best prepared to be the Republican choice for president. At a time when the likely Democrat nominee, President Joe Biden, is working to convince the country that with Bidenomics, things are looking up.
They call my plan Bidenomics.
Why are they playing this?
I'm not sure they meant it in a totally complimentary way at the time. But guess what? It's working.
But is it? More than 65% of Americans
question?
say the country is headed in the wrong direction. And here's the reality for some voters we talked to here in Wisconsin this week.
We have noticed a dramatic increase in prices at the grocery store just across the board.
Gas is high and food is high. A lot of people's out here homeless because they can't buy food.
It's tough when you got mortgage rates at 7-8% versus 2 to 3. It's just you can't afford the house anymore.
Inflation is ridiculous. It's killing us out here.
It's ridiculous, guys.
We
It's
sit
just
here tonight.
ridiculous.
The #1 song on the Billboard chart is called Rich Men North of Richmond. It is by a singer from
Really? This is how they're gonna start
Farmville,
this out?
Virginia, named Oliver Anthony. His lyrics speak of alienation, of deep frustration
Interesting.
with the state of government and of this country. Washington, D.C. is about 100 miles north of Richmond.
These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end. 'Cause the rich men, 'cause the rich men.
So, Governor DeSantis, why is this song
Ooh, start with
striking
DeSantis.
such a nerve in this country right now? What do you think it means?
Our country is in decline. This decline is not inevitable. It's a choice. We need to send Joe Biden back to his basement and reverse American decline.
Obviously.
And it starts with understanding we must reverse Bidenomics so that middle-class families have a chance to succeed again. We cannot succeed as a country if you are working hard and you can't afford groceries, a car, or a new home, while Hunter Biden can make hundreds of thousands of dollars on lousy paintings. That is wrong. We also cannot succeed when the Congress spends trillions and trillions of dollars. Those rich men north of Richmond have put us in this situation. And finally, we need to lower your gas prices. We're going to open up all energy production. We will be energy dominant again in this country. I showed it could be done in the state of Florida. I pledge to you as your president, we will get the job done, and I will not let you down.
I like DeSantis. I just feel like he doesn't have that X factor. I don't know.
Governor Christie, do you agree with Governor DeSantis just said there? And why would you be better on the economy than him?
Well,
look, I do agree
Krispy Kreme.
predominantly with what Governor DeSantis just laid out. And I think that if you asked every one of us up here, that we would agree predominantly with what he just laid out. Here's the difference. The difference is that we're going to have to work and make sure that we sell these ideas and be able to put ourselves in a position where we get a majority of the vote, not only by winning the Congress and the Senate in 24, but also by having someone who's had the experience of doing it. Now, I was elected as a conservative Republican in a blue state with 61% of the vote, with a Democratic legislature against me the entire time.
Approval rating.
And we still, through hard, strong decision-making, brought them around to our point of view. We cut taxes in New Jersey. We cut debt in New Jersey. We made sure that each and every time we were confronted with bad Democratic ideas, we stood and stopped them. And when there were good ideas, we brought people together to make progress going forward.
This guy hates Trump, by the way.
And accountability are the things we need to do to fight waste. And I'd say the last thing is this, Brett. We cannot sit by any longer and allow the kind of spending that's going on in Washington.
When you were governor, had the second lowest credit rating in the nation after Illinois, and it was downgraded 11 times.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what happens when you inherit a blue state that has done that. But when you look at what we did on debt, Brett, in that state, we cut debt in that state, debt that had been left to us by 3 Democratic gubernatorial predecessors of mine who ran up that debt tremendously. And what you also saw us do was to cut the unemployment rate in half. It was over 10% when I became governor in 2010. What we also did was cut pension payments to public employees to make sure that taxpayers were not being soaked by a public employee union system that was killing the taxpayer.
Thank you, Governor.
Tim Scott, Senator Scott, excuse me. The song also goes after welfare programs. As a senator, now President Biden argued for freezing federal spending, this was back in the 80s, and dealing with sacred cows. He does not talk about that anymore. You have been a senator, though, for 10 years. So what have you done to rein in the increasing size of government?
Well, thank you for the question. Over the last several years, I've had an opportunity to vote against spending package after spending package after spending package. What we also need to understand is that Joe Biden's Bidenomics has led to the loss of $10,000 of spending power for the average family. When you see 16% inflation, your gas is up 40%, your food is up 20%, your electricity is up 20%. We can stop that by turning the spigot off in Washington, sending the money back to the states, and allowing the decisions to be made at their own houses. I helped write the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. We cut taxes for a single mom like the one that raised me by 70%, for dual households by 60%, returning to the average family $4,000. If you don't send it to Washington, we can't spend it. That's good news for the American people.
Okay, but just to follow up, you did, during the Trump administration, you approved $4.4 trillion, $4.1 trillion, $1.7 trillion over the course of that administration. That's a lot of money.
There's no doubt that during the Trump administration, when we were dealing with the COVID virus, we spent more money. But here's what happened at the end of our time in the majority. We had low unemployment, record low unemployment, 3.5% for the majority of the population, 70-year low for women. African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians had an all-time low, but our inflation was at 2%. Under Joe Biden, we've seen the exact opposite. We've seen
whatever they tell you the inflation rate is a lie. It's much higher than what it actually is.
Federal Reserve increases that's devastating home buyers today.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you're listening to these answers.
If I may,
hold on one second.
We're going to, so I don't know if I get a chance to respond.
He didn't mention you specifically, but we'll be with you in a second, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Ramaswamy, listening to all of this, why should voters choose you over more experienced politicians on this stage?
Well, this will be good.
You're basically, a blank slate for people. You're 38 years old. You've said that you only voted in 2 presidential elections before this moment, this political race.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage? I'll tell you, I'm not a politician, Brett. You're right about that. I'm an entrepreneur. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That is the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream will not exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. And I do think Brett is going to take an outsider, because for a long time we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something.
Yeah.
To our vision of what it means to be an American today. If you have a broken car, you don't turn over the keys to the people who broke it again. You hand it over to a new generation to actually fix the problem. That's why I'm in this race, and we're just getting warmed up.
All right.
That's fire.
Hell
yeah.
Why are you better
I like that slogan,
positioned
hand it over to a new generation to fix the problem.
this economy that we've heard all of these voters talking about tonight than Mr. Ramaswamy, who is a successful entrepreneur nationally right now? He's beating you in the polls.
Well, I don't care about polls. What I care about the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us, too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt. And our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
What's the national debt? That's in the trillions. You're talking about. That is so irrelevant. Earmarks.
54% of voters say the cost of groceries is a, quote, major problem for them.
Right.
You blame the Biden administration spending for that increase. But as
it's all about
Vice
money.
President, your
That's all it's been
administration
about
spent
so far.
more than any prior, $7.8 trillion added to the national debt, $3.5 trillion of that before COVID. So does that mean that you're part of the spending problem?
Well, first off, thanks for the question. Thanks for letting me respond to a reference to our administration's record. I'm incredibly proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. I mean, in 4 short years, we rebuilt our military. We revived our economy. We unleashed American energy. And we appointed 3 conservatives to the Supreme Court that gave the American people a new beginning for the right to life. Now, Martha, you asked earlier who's the most best prepared for this job. And I must tell you, with all due respect to all of my friends on the stage, and even to one that's probably looking on, I think unquestionably I am the best prepared, the most tested, the most qualified and proven conservative in this race. I was a leader in the Congress of the United States. I led Indiana where we balanced budgets and had a AAA bond rating when I was governor.
He's got a good track record, but
we spent
kind of a
funding
traitor.
to backfill on the military cuts of the Obama administration, and then we were there in the worst pandemic in 100 years. All that being said, I was the first person in this race to say that we've got to deal with the long-term national debt issues.
You're the first person to cut ties with Trump,
that
too.
won't even talk about issues like Social Security and Medicare. I mean, Vivek, you recently said a president can't do everything. Well, I got news for you, Vivek. I've been in the hallway. I've been in the West Wing. A president of the United States
can't do everything.
has to confront every crisis.
Okay, well, that's why we had checks and
America.
balances. 3 branches of government.
Our nation back on the path to growth and prosperity
that was
and
terrible.
Restore fiscal responsibility, just as I did in Congress and as governor.
That is so incorrect,
and
it's such a terrible statement.
But,
Yeah, hold on.
You were named earlier. I'm going to get Vivek first.
We'll get to both of them.
This isn't that complicated, guys. Unlock American energy. drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear.
Yeah.
Put people back to work by no longer paying them more to stay at home. Reform the U.S. Fed, stabilize the U.S.
That's it
dollar,
right there.
and go to war. The only war that I will declare as U.S. president will be the war on the federal administrative state that is the source of those toxic regulations acting like a wet blanket on the economy. So I'm not sure I exactly understood Mike Pence's comment, but I'll let you all parse that out. For me, it's pretty simple. That's something a U.S. president can do with focus, and I'll deliver on it.
Well, let me explain it to you. If I can. I'll go slower this time.
I sometimes struggle with the reading comprehension.
Look, I was a House conservative leader before it was cool.
Pence is salty.
I actually pushed a Deficit Reduction Act. That was the last time we actually reduced the national debt in the United States.
He knows Vivek
when I was the leader of
is
House
such a threat.
conservatives. I balanced budgets and cut taxes when I was governor. I mean, look, Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. Now is not the time for on-the-job training. We don't need to bring in a rookie. We don't need to bring in people without experience. We need to bring
That's not a bad line, but still, I think that's irrelevant.
Hold on. It's 30 seconds when you have a rebuttal, okay? And you are up, Governor DeSantis.
So
You're not
here's
going to
the
let Vivek
thing.
respond?
Why are we in this mess?
What?
Part of it, and a major reason, is because how this federal government handled COVID-19 by locking down this economy. It was a mistake. It should have never happened. And in Florida, we led the country out of lockdown. We kept our state free and open. And I can tell you this, as your president, I will never let the deep state bureaucrats lock you down. You don't take somebody like Fauci and coddle him. You bring Fauci in, you sit him down, and you say, Anthony, you are fired.
Anthony, you are fired. I mean, I don't disagree with him here. I like DeSantis, but
I just want to respond to Mike for 1 second because
he's just so corny.
Listen, now that everybody's gotten
Doesn't have that X factor.
Prepared slogans out of the way, we can actually have a real discussion now. The reality and the fact of the matter is,
Memorize prepared slogans.
Not really, Mike. Actually, we're just going to have some fun.
He's
tonight.
triggering Pence.
And the reality
He is triggering
you
him.
have a bunch of people, professional politicians, super PAC puppets, following slogans handed over to them by their 400-page super PACs last week. The real choice we face in this primary is this. Do you want a super PAC puppet, or do you want a patriot who speaks the truth? Do you want incremental reform?
There's a lot of puppets on that stage.
About, or do you want revolution?
Okay.
And I stand on the side of the American Revolution.
Yes, sir.
We're going to
That's
take
fire.
control back here.
I like that, the American Revolution
a moment
reference.
on the economy.
Yeah.
I think
That's
that's
what it's
fair.
about.
There are two people who have not.
You can tell how
we're gonna get back
Vivek
to
is
that.
so
We are.
real compared to
There are two
everybody
people
else.
who we
Just
have
listen to
not
the way
heard
he
from yet. So
talks.
let's hear from Governor Bergman
It's not even
and
close.
then from Governor Hutchinson on the economy, sir.
Well, great. Thank you, Martha. And of course, I'm from a town of 300 people. It's a big deal to make it on this
Who is
stage
this
with
guy?
all these folks. But
Doug Bergen.
But when they were all wishing me well, and I think I took them a little too literally when they said go to Milwaukee and break a leg. So, but I do want to say on this, we're missing something. We can't just talk about the Biden economy because the economy, energy, and national security are all tied together. Of course, we're paying too much for our energy in our state in our country right now. But part of the reason why is because of the Biden policies on energy. We've got a plan right now, the $1.2 trillion of Green New Deal spending buried in the Inflation Creation Act is something that is just subsidizing China. If we're going to stop buying oil from the Middle East and start buying batteries from China, we're just trading OPEC for Sinopec. And then belatedly, the Biden administration says, no, we're going to put sanctions on Russian oil. Well, we put sanctions on Russian oil, well, then it's 20% off. Who's buying it? China. So if you buy a battery in this country, if you buy a solar panel, it's being produced in a plant in China powered by coal, or it's being powered by oil and gas at 20% off. And every farmer in this country would like to buy diesel at 20% off, just like they're buying it in China.
He cooked there.
Governor Hutchinson,
wow. I didn't expect that one. It's a really different approach talking about energy there. That's
delighted to be
good.
here tonight. And let me just tell you that I'm a pro-life
this
governor
guy.
from a conservative state that have a conservative record in which I lowered taxes in Arkansas as governor.
He's
I
wearing an
created
Israel
$2 billion
flag on his
surplus
shirt.
that
That's
I passed
crazy.
over to my successor.
That is crazy.
And
Israel.
I made sure that we shrunk the size of government. We have 14% fewer state employees in Arkansas after I left government than when I took over as governor 8 years ago. I tell that because that's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need somebody who can actually constrain the growth of the federal government, that can actually reduce the size, and I've pledged to reduce by 10% our federal non-defense workforce.
Shorts past
That's
the
a specific
ankles.
pledge to make
Pull
that
up your
attacks
pants.
the administrative state.
No rap
And let me
music.
applaud
Absolutely
some of the business
no
partners
rap
that are
music.
here that have had success in business. But let me tell you, I've been a federal prosecutor. I've served our country
looks like an
in
alien.
terms of being head of the DEA, in Homeland Security, in times of crisis. And while I think that that's experience that is important for the future of our country, to be the President of the United States that can lead with positive solutions and be held accountable.
Thank you.
He's going to get the least amount of
votes
votes out of everybody
we're
there.
going to get to
I'm calling
everyone if we play within the rules. Okay, next topic. More than 1,000 people are still unaccounted for in Maui after the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Hawaii's governor and White House officials said that climate change amplified the cost of human error.
And a tropical storm hit California for the first time in 84 years. The ocean hit 101 degrees off the coast of Florida. And in the last month, the heat wave in the Southwest broke records nearly 50 years old.
So Alexander Diaz from Young America's Foundation has a question for you.
Polls consistently show that young people's #1 issue is climate change. How will you, as both President of the United States and leader of the Republican Party, calm their fears that the Republican Party doesn't care about climate change?
So we want to start on this with a show of hands. Do you believe in human behavior is causing climate change? Raise your hand if you do.
Look, we're not school children. Let's have the debate. I mean, I'm happy to take it to start. Alexander.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
I don't think that's the way to do. So let me just say to Alexander this. First of all, one of the reasons our country's decline is because of the way the corporate media treats Republicans versus Democrats. Biden was on the beach while those people were suffering. He was asked about it. He said no comment.
Talking about climate change.
Are you kidding me? As somebody that's handled disasters in Florida, you got to be activated. You've got to be there. You've got to be present. You've got to be helping people who are doing this. And here's the deal.
Yeah, literally. Like what?
So
is that a yes or is that a yes?
Cut him off. He's not even answering the question.
I think it was a hand raise for him, and it's my hands are in my pockets.
No, I didn't raise a hand.
Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
Everyone's booing him. That did not go well in the banter. What?
The anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. And so the reality is more people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change.
Governor Haley, are you bought?
That's true.
Hold on.
It's the policies, it's not the actual climate change.
Hold on.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And
this is interesting.
The last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Come on, give me a hug. Give me a hug just like you did to Obama.
The same type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
the same type of amateur.
Hold on.
Oh, that was a good one.
Would you like to respond?
Because Chrissy did give Obama a hug.
To say is the fact that I think this is exactly why Margaret Thatcher said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
What? That's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
First of all, we do care about clean air, clean water. We want to see that taken care of. But there's a right way to do it. And the right way to do it is, first of all, yes, is climate change real? Yes, it is. But if you want to go and really change the environment, then we need to start telling China and India that they have to lower their emissions. That's where our problem
I still can't believe
and these green subsidies
she made that remark. That is terrible.
All he's done is help China because he doesn't understand
all these electric vehicles that he's done.
What that does. Half of the batteries for electric vehicles are made in China. And so that's not helping the environment. You're putting money in China's pocket, and Biden did that. So first of all, I think we need to acknowledge the truth, which is these subsidies are not working. We also need to take on the international world and say, okay, India and China, you've got to stop polluting, and that's when we'll start to deal with
Senator Scott, are you bought and paid for?
Absolutely.
Are you bought and paid for?
I'm sorry?
Are you bought and paid for?
Absolutely not. I mean, here's what the
This
American
guy's a
people
joke.
deserve is a debate about the issues that affect their lives.
He's like a
Going
black
back and
Bill
forth and
Clinton.
being childish is not helpful to the American people to decide on the next leader of our country. Number one, wait a second. Number two, as a kid who grew up in a single-parent household mired in poverty, I wondered, was the American dream real for kids who were devastated by poverty, devastated by the challenges of life? I came to the conclusion that America can do for anyone what she's done for me if we focus on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting America. If we want the environment to be better, and we all do, the best thing to do is to bring our jobs home from China. If we create 10 million new jobs in my Made in America plan, we will have a better economy and
not a
better
direct
environment.
solution.
Let me tell you why I say that, Brett. America,
Do it quickly.
America has cut. I'm a Southern boy. I talk slow. So America.
Is that the reason why?
That was quick. America has cut our carbon footprint in half in the last 25 years. The places where they are continuing to increase: Africa, 950 million people. India, over 1 billion. China, over 1 billion. Why would we put ourselves at a disadvantage, devastating our own economy? Let's bring our jobs home.
We have a lot of different topics to get to.
Yeah, we do. We thank you all. Thank you, Senator Scott. So coming up next, the
That was
candidates
pretty
will
good.
weigh in on
They
what could
attacked
be a
Vivek
defining
there.
issue in the 2024 campaign, upheld abortion rights in this country. And even in red states, there are more swing state referendums that are coming up as we head into the elections as well on this.
Okay, abortion.
So, Governor Haley, what do you say to your party and to your state, which today confirmed a 6-week abortion law as well, especially the impact on women suburban voters across this country?
Thank you, Martha. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children, so I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, we need to stop demonizing this issue. This is talking about the fact that unelected justices didn't need to decide something this personal, because it's personal for every woman and man. Now it's been put in the hands of the people. That's great. When it comes to a federal ban, let's be honest with the American people and say it will take 60 Senate votes. It will take a majority of the House. So in order to do that, let's find consensus. Can't we all agree that we should ban late-term abortions? Can't we all agree that we should encourage adoptions? Can't we all agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we all agree that contraception should be available? And can't we all agree that we are not going to put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty if she gets an abortion? Let's treat this like a respectful issue that it is, and humanize the situation and stop demonizing the situation.
Brett, Governor, hold on.
I disagree with that.
Vice President Pence, Governor DeSantis, you signed a 6-week abortion ban in Florida. One of your biggest financial
His
backers
smile's so
said
weird.
that you need to, quote, shift to get moderates or you will lose. What do you say to him and others who say politically that is a tough thing to sell nationally?
Well, I would say we sold the biggest election landslide victory in the history of the Republican Party in the state of Florida in 2022. That's what I did. We can win. But second of all, look, you got to do what you think is right. I believe in a culture of life. I was proud to sign the heartbeat bill. I remember one of the most impactful moments of my life was when I heard the heartbeat of my oldest daughter in my wife's womb, and then saw the sonograms of all 3 of my kids. What the Democrats are trying to do on this issue is wrong, to allow abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. I know a lady in Florida named Penny.
Up to the moment of birth,
She
though?
survived
What about
multiple
before?
abortion attempts. She was left discarded in a pan. Fortunately, her grandmother saved her and brought her to a different hospital. We're better than what the Democrats are selling. We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism.
But just to be clear, Governor, would you sign a 6-week ban federally?
I'm going to stand on the side of life. Look, I understand Wisconsin is going to do it different than Texas. I understand Iowa and New Hampshire are going to do different. But I will support the cause of life as governor and as president.
Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head.
We must have a national.
Hold on, Senator. Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head.
Well, look, I'm I'm not new to this cause. After I gave my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I opened up the book and I read,
Oh, this is supposed to be a powerful
before I
moment.
formed you in the womb, I knew you. And see, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. And I knew from that moment on, the cause of life had to be my cause. And I've been a champion for life in the Congress, a champion for life as governor and as vice president. And to be honest with you, Nikki, you're my friend, but consensus is the opposite of leadership. When the Supreme Court returned this question to the American people, they didn't just send it to the states only. It's not a states-only issue. It's a moral issue. And I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office. Can't we have a minimum standard in every state in the nation that says when a baby is capable of feeling pain, an abortion cannot be allowed? A 15-week ban is an idea whose time has come. It's supported by 70% of the American people, but it's going to take unapologetic leadership that stands on principle and expresses compassion for women in crisis pregnancies. I'll do that as President of the United States.
He called my name, so I want to respond to that.
30 seconds.
So first of all, I will say it is in the hands of the people, and that's where it should be. But when you're talking about a federal ban, be honest with the American people. We haven't had 45 pro-life senators in over 100 years. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president could ban all those state laws. Don't make women feel like they have to decide on this issue when you know we don't have 60 Senate votes in the House.
70% of the American people support legislation to ban abortion after a baby is capable of experiencing pain. It's just going to take leadership.
Hold on.
70% of the Senate does not. You have to be honest with the American people.
We have to have a 15-week limit.
Let's get Governor Bergman for one minute here.
Okay.
But the Supreme Court did overturn Roe v. Wade, and the result of that decision was that it went back to the states. So that's where it is right now. So as I understand it, you are not in favor of a federal ban. What do you say about the states? There's about 5 of them, including New Jersey, I think a few others, that allow abortion up until the time of birth, though. If you were president, would you be able to abide that?
Well, first of all, I'm a pro-life governor of a very pro-life state. And this issue is, of course, very important. But I am on the record, and I stand behind that we should not have a federal abortion ban. We should not. And the reason why we shouldn't is very simple. It's the 10th Amendment. In the Constitution, which the states created the federal government, not the other way around, it says that there were certain duties allowed to the federal government delegated to them by the states. The rest are left to the states, comma, or importantly, or to the people. We need to get back to freedom and liberty for the people in this country. And we can't have Republicans who fight for 50 years for this great cause and to return it back to the states. And then the next day they turn around and go, no, the feds should do that, because the feds are stepping into people's lives. They're stepping into people's businesses. Over and over. If we say that the Fed should be in on this one, where do we stop? I say that we follow the Constitution, and this is returned to the states. This is where it should be.
But Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. Time out. You signed a 6-week ban. Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. So you're saying federally, it's all going to go to the states.
Yes, and what is going to work in New York will never work in North Dakota, and vice versa. That's
Governor
why 50 states. That's why 50 states.
This is too important of an issue that I have to address. First of all, the Supreme Court gave it back to the elected representatives, whether it's the states or whether it's the United States Congress. So there is authority, and that's why President Biden is pushing for gave it back to the elected representatives, whether it's the states or whether it's the United States Congress. So there is authority, and that's why President Biden is pushing for a Democrat proposal, which is, in essence, abortion on demand through the term. So they have their extreme position at a national level. It's most likely going to be addressed in the states, but it's certainly fine for it to be addressed at the national level as well. Arkansas has the record of being the most pro-life state in the nation. I signed 30 pro-life pieces of legislation while I was governor. And every state can determine a different outcome here, and it is the most important issue for women and for the unborn child and for our country that we get this right. It's going to be a continued debate.
This guy was like Secretary of
Let's
Defense
talk
during
about
the
it
Bush
in terms of
administration, for everybody that doesn't
compassion,
know.
in terms of protecting the life, and also understanding how we have to enhance adoption services, how we have to enhance maternal care. Those things we've done in Arkansas and are important for our nation's future.
There are a lot of issues that are very important. Senator, I'll let you weigh in.
We cannot let states like California, New York, and Illinois have abortions on demand up until the day of birth. That is immoral. It is unethical. It is wrong. We must have a president of the United States who will advocate and fight for, at the minimum, a 15-week limit. I am 100% pro-life conservative. I have a 100% pro-life record. I got to tell you, though, we must fight for life. Our Declaration of Independence says our Creator gave us inalienable rights that include life. That is a list. That is an issue we must solve. We can't leave it to Illinois. We can't leave it to Minnesota. We can't leave it to Illinois. We must solve that issue with a 15-week limit at a minimum.
Thank you,
I
Senator.
think we're all pro-life, but what I would love is for someone to ask Biden and Kamala Harris, are they for 38 weeks? Are they for 39 weeks? Are they for 40 weeks? Because that's what the media needs to be asking.
All right, another issue is America and the crime crisis, the homelessness crisis. American cities are in decline. People are moving out as homelessness, drugs, crime move in. There are problems accelerated. They did accelerate during the pandemic and are still rising, actually.
Murders in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, all up 30% between 2019 and 2022. Homelessness is up 11%, the largest jump in recorded history. Vice President Pence, a lot of this began in the COVID era. How much of what we're seeing happening around this country is a result of those COVID lockdowns, and is your administration in part to blame for how we got here?
Well, I think what's in part to blame is the Democrats have been talking about defunding the police for the last 5 years. And we ought to be funding law enforcement, particularly in our major cities, at unprecedented levels. I mean, it's extraordinary to think about the violence that's claiming innocent lives literally every week in every major city in this country. And yet Democrats and liberal prosecutors in major metropolitan areas continue to work out their fanciful agendas, to do bail reform and go easy. What we need is strong commitment to law enforcement. We need leadership in Washington, D.C. that'll marshal the resources of the states, marshal the resources of the American people. But let me also say it's about opportunity. I mean, a lot of people don't know that those Trump-Pence tax cuts that we got signed into law go away at the end of 2025 if we don't have a Republican president and a Republican House and a Republican Senate. When I'm president of the United States, we're actually going to cut taxes further. We're going to extend those tax cuts, and we're going to close the Federal Department of Education, block grant all that funding back to the states with a growing economy and educational choice and law enforcement. We will bring our cities back.
Governor Christie, another issue. This weekend here in Milwaukee, reports say there were 30 shootings, and a number of them including kids. Add that to the big increase in school shootings around the country. Democrats blame this crisis on easy access to guns. They also blame Republicans for blocking gun control legislation. What would President Christie do?
You know, I'm proud of the fact, Brett, that I'm the only person, along with Governor Hutchinson, up on this stage who's actually running United States Attorney's Office. I ran the 5th largest office in America in a state where there is significant urban crime. And the problem is not going to be solved by more money. The problem is that these prosecutors in these localities in the states are refusing to do their job and to arrest violent criminals. So what a President Christie would do is appoint an attorney general who would instruct each of the 93 U.S. attorneys that they are to take over the prosecution of violent crime in every one of those cities that are failing to do so. We have plenty of room in the federal prisons to lock up these violent criminals and clean up what's going on all across this country in these individual cities. Secondly, What we need to make sure that each and every one of these criminals understand is that the laws apply to everybody. And when Hunter Biden fills out a fake application, a false application for a gun permit, and then is facing a 10-year mandatory minimum, which was mandated by legislation sponsored by his father, and then you have a Justice Department that walks away from those charges, we're telling people that the law doesn't apply to everybody. In a Christie administration, he would go to jail for 10 years.
What about a President Ramaswamy?
Yeah, everybody thinks,
what does a President Ramaswamy do about guns?
So the reality is we have a crime wave in this country, and we know how to fix it. The question is, do we actually have the spine to do it? More cops in the streets who are on the streets able to do their jobs without looking over their shoulder for getting sued. And we also have a mental health epidemic in this country. Just over the same period that we have closed mental health institutions, we have seen a spike in violent crime. Do we have the spine to bring them back? I think we should. As president, I will. But it's not just drugging up people in those psychiatric institutions with Zoloft and Seroquel. It's a deeper issue. I think faith-based approaches can play a role here, too. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis. And I say this as a member of my generation. The problem in our country right now, the reason we have that mental health epidemic, is that people are so hungry for purpose and meaning at a time when family, faith, patriotism, hard work have all disappeared. What we really need is a tonal reset from the top, saying that this is what it means to be an American. Yes, we will stand for the rule of law. Yes, we will close the southern border where criminals are coming in every day. And yes, we will back law enforcement because we remember who we really are. And that's also how we address that mental health epidemic in the next generation that is directly leading to violent crime across this country.
Governor DeSantis, really quickly.
Good. He's really smooth. Like I said, let's see how real he is compared to everybody else.
We're not looking for a new national identity. The American people are the most faith-filled, freedom-loving, idealistic, hardworking people the world has ever known. We just need government as good as our people.
Well, Mike, I think the difference is you might have, some others like you may have on the stage, it's Morning in America speech. It is not Morning in America. We live in a dark moment, and we have to confront the fact that we're in an internal, sort of cold cultural civil war. And we have to recognize
the American people with the failed government in Washington, D.C. We just need government as good as our people again.
So let me just finish addressing that slogan, because I don't know what that slogan means. We need to shut down the administrative state. That's actually how we translate it.
Crime has been on the rise in Florida, Governor DeSantis. How do you stop crime?
Well, actually, crime's at a 50-year low in Florida.
We're
happy with that. Well, the statewide, it's a 50-year low. And so here's the thing.
Not in Miami.
These hollowed out cities, this is a symptom of America's decline. And one of the biggest reasons is because you have George Soros funding these radical left-wing district attorneys. They get into office and they say they're not going to prosecute crimes they disagree with. The inmates start running the asylum. There's one guy in this entire country that's ever done anything about that. Me. When we had two of these district attorneys in Florida elected with Soros funding who said they wouldn't do their job, I removed them from their posts. They are gone. And as president, we are going to go after all of these people because they are hurting the quality of life and they are victimizing innocent people in every corner of this country, and it will stop when I get into office.
Okay, one more here before the break, Governor Bergen.
That's pretty good.
Well, Brett and Martha, I just thought it was interesting. You asked your question about the problems we're having in big cities. Nobody ever asked the question of what about the crime wave in small towns? Because in a small town, neighbors help neighbors. People understand each other. If a farmer gets sick, everybody comes together and helps him get the crop off. There's accountability. There's transparency. One thing that I think this country could use is somebody in the White House that understands small town values, because that's our road back to get this country on track again.
Governor, they pull up on their horses in North Dakota.
As former head of the DEA, I understand the drug crisis in America. And right now, whenever you look at the challenges in our inner city, there's three simple words that would be helpful. One, enforce the law when it comes to crime. Secondly, let's deal with the challenge of fentanyl. And it's both about stopping the fentanyl coming from Mexico, but it's also about education of our young people, making sure that we have the tools that are needed for addiction counseling. That's what we expanded in Arkansas as well. Whenever you look at the underlying challenge of America, though, no one likes to see an America with smash and grab in our inner cities. As President of the United States, that will stop. It starts at the top with the respect for our justice system that a former president who's under indictment has undermined by attacking judges, by attacking prosecutors, by attacking the system and saying he's aggrieved. And so we have to have respect for our justice system and the rule of law, and it starts at the top with the President of the United States.
Brett,
Thank you. Hold on.
Take a break.
The office of President of the United States.
Oh, this is the section about Trump.
This is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you raised your hand supporting.
No, I'd like to get in and respond. Let's just speak the truth, okay? President Trump, I believe, was the best president of the 21st century. It's a fact. And Chris Christie, honest to God, your claim that Donald Trump is motivated by vengeance and grievance would be a lot more credible if your entire campaign were not based on vengeance and grievance against one man.
Yes, sir.
And if people at home
That was good.
see a bunch of
That was
people
good.
blindly bashing Donald Trump without an iota of vision for this country,
Like I said,
they
he's
can
the
just
only
change
real
the channel
person
to
out there.
MSNBC right now. But I'm not running for president of MSNBC.
True.
I am running for president of the United States. We're skating on thin ice, and we cannot set a precedent where the party in power uses police force to indict its political opponents. It is wrong.
I really like him. He's him, I swear.
30 seconds, Governor DeSantis.
He's winning this so far.
30 seconds, Governor
You make me laugh because
See, he's just so triggered. Him, Pence, Haley, they all get triggered when Vivek speaks.
you sit here and
He's getting booed. Look at that. Look at that. R.I.P.
you sit
Christie.
here and answer.
Go ahead, Governor Christie.
The banter is not feeling Chris Christie.
Well, so listen, the more time we spend doing this, the less time they can talk about issues you want to talk about. So let's just get through this section. Governor Christie.
You sit here talking about how you want to stand up for the rule of law.
Yes.
And law and order. And the fact is that it can't be selective. In your book, you had much different things to say about Donald Trump than you're saying here tonight.
That's not true.
Well, it is very true.
That is not
It's
true.
very true. I read it,
Because
and
there's
I know.
a difference
Look,
between bad behavior and illegal
by the way,
behavior, Chris, and you as a
by the way,
prosecutor should know better.
Yeah, you know what? I know a lot
There's
better.
a difference between bad behavior. And
I know a lot better than you do. You've never done it like you've never done anything to try to advance the interests of this government except to put yourself forward as a candidate tonight. And here's
Started
the
a
thing.
billion-dollar company,
we stood
idiot.
up for law and order. I did it as U.S. attorney. I did it as governor. And I am not going to
You left with 8% approval rating?
When we have a president of the United States who disrespects the Constitution. He said.
Really? How so?
He said.
Get your MSNBC contributor.
Exactly. Vivek's right. He's bought and paid for. They will not defend
Martha,
Trump.
It's important to say that the president
It's clear.
said, Donald Trump said, it's okay to suspend the Constitution. Now, the oath you take is to preserve, protect, and defend.
What
not
did he do?
suspend. I will always stand up for
What
our
did he do?
Constitution.
He's not even
regardless
specific.
of the
He's just
political
literally
pressure.
throwing
We have
broad
another
stuff out
question for
there.
you. We're going to get everyone
None
in
of the,
on
I
this
guarantee
issue.
all of
I have
them
another question. I have another
will
question.
just
Hold
bash
on, you
Trump
will.
because they're afraid
All right,
and they're bought and
so
paid for.
President
Just like
Trump's
Vivek said
former
earlier.
vice president is on this stage tonight. He has faced hecklers on the campaign trail over his actions on January the 6th. On that day, the vice president moved forward with the certification of the election. So do you believe that Mike Pence did the right thing, Senator Scott? Do you believe he did the right thing?
Absolutely. He did the right thing. Number one. Number two.
Why are we asking this?
We should be asking ourselves a bigger question about the weaponization of the Department of Justice. When I'm president, the first thing I'll do is fire Merrick Garland. Second thing I'll do,
everybody would
fire Christopher Wray, because we need Lady Justice to wear a blindfold. Without
Firing
that,
people doesn't
no one
change
has
anything.
confidence in our
You gotta
justice
eradicate
system.
the departments.
17% of Republicans have confidence in our Department of Justice. Here's why. we keep seeing not only the weaponization of the Department of Justice against political opponents, but also against parents who show up at school board meetings. They're called, under this DOJ, they're called domestic terrorists.
Firing Christopher
but that's not,
Wray,
but that's not
shut down the FBI. Actually have the courage to get it right.
He's right. Shut down the
Let
FBI.
me finish my comments.
Yes.
Not only that, in addition to that, we see the SWAT team show up at pro-life activist homes with guns drawn because this DOJ uses their power, uses their authority, not just against political opponents, but against conservatives and conservative causes. It is time for a change in America, and I will bring that change to the greatest nation on God's green earth.
He just doesn't have it.
But Governor DeSantis, do you believe that Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th?
So here's what we need to do.
Why are they
asking
asking
We need to end the weaponization of these federal agents.
But that's not
I
the
will do
question.
that.
That's not the question.
I know, but here's the thing.
gonna answer the
This
question?
election
Right, it
is
doesn't
not
matter.
about January 6th of 2021.
Facts.
It's about January 20th of 2025 when the next president is going to take
Preach.
office. I know what the Democrats would like to do. They want to talk about all these other issues, but we've got to focus on your future. We've got to focus on reversing the decline of our country.
Right.
I learned in the military, I was assigned with U.S. Navy SEALs in Iraq, that you focus on the mission above all else. You can't get distracted. So Republicans, we've got to look forward, and we've got to make sure that we're bringing the message that can win in
Vice
November
President Pence,
2021.
The question.
The question doesn't matter. That was perfect. Oh yeah,
This
DeSantis.
is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I think the American people deserve to know whether everyone on this stage agrees that I kept my oath to the Constitution that day. There's no
What do you
more
mean you kept
important
your oath
duty.
to the
So answer
Constitution?
question.
What are you
I've
implying?
answered this before.
So yes.
Why are we? Mike did his duty. I got no beef with him. But here's the thing: is this what we're going to be focusing on?
I'm relieved.
Going
Yes.
forward, the rehashing of this. I'll tell you,
Governor
the
DeSantis,
Democrats would love that, and they will win if we
Governor
let him get
DeSantis,
away with it.
DeSantis won this round for sure. Oh yeah, the banter's feeling that.
We're going to hold him accountable.
Let me just say,
Ron
Governor
on top
DeSantis,
this
we spent
round.
an hour talking about policy. Former President Trump is beating you by 30, 40 points in many polls. So it is a
He's not
factor
even there.
in the GOP primary. Governor Hutchinson, you did not raise your hand.
I did not raise my hand
Okay,
because there's an important issue we as a party have to face. And over a year ago, I said that Donald Trump was morally disqualified from being president again as a result of what happened on January 6th.
Get
More
out of here.
people are understanding the importance of that,
Traitor.
including conservative legal scholars who says he may be disqualified under the 14th Amendment from being president again
disqualified.
as a
It's
result
that
of the
same pocket
insurrection.
Constitution logic.
This is something that could disqualify him.
What did he do?
under
Insurrection.
rules
What did he do? Did he
and
storm into the
under
White House with a flag?
Constitution.
No, he didn't.
And so, obviously, I'm not going to support somebody who's been convicted of a serious felony or who has
You as a
is
prosecutor should
disqualified
know
under
that
our
every single
Constitution, and that's
prosecution
consistent
doesn't
with RNC
mean that you're
rules,
guilty.
and I hope everybody would agree with me.
This guy has had the worst takes this entire time.
Martha, can I answer the
Ace on
question?
bottom.
Okay, I'd like to answer.
You
No, I'm
have already
giving
been
my-
on
We'll see
line,
if Christie
Vice
here.
President Pence.
All right, I'd like to answer the question
Go
you
ahead.
asked and not give a pre-canned speech. Mike Pence stood for the Constitution. And he deserves not grudging credit. He deserves our thanks as
Why are we talking
Americans
about this so?
for putting his oath of office and the Constitution of the United States before personal, political, and unfair pressure. And the
us what
argument that
happened.
we
What did
need to
Trump do?
have in this party before we can move on to the issues
Unfair,
that Ron talked about
political, like-
is we have to dispense with the person
They don't
who
talk
said
about
that
it.
we need to suspend the Constitution.
How did he say
to
that?
put
What did he
forward
say?
his
What was he
political
referencing?
career.
You're
Mike
not-
Pence said no,
It's
and
unclear.
he deserves credit for it.
Okay. Governor Haley, we haven't heard from you on this. Do you agree? Do you agree that Vice President Pence did the right thing that day or not?
I do think that Vice President Pence did the right thing, and I do think that we
Another
need to
one,
give
another
him
traitor.
credit for that. But what I will also tell you is, look, I mean, when it comes to whether President Trump should serve or not, I trust the American people. Let them vote. Let them decide. But what they will tell you is that it is time for a new generational conservative leader. We have to look at the fact
That's
that
true, but not you.
3/4 of Americans don't want a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We
Not
can't win
true.
a general
That's
election
false.
that way.
Joe Biden beats him by a landslide. That's not even close.
Governor Bergen.
It's Governor Bergen, opportunity.
Happy to answer the question. Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th.
Another one.
But I would say you started off the top of this hour saying we're going to talk about China, Ukraine, education, and
Vivek?
arms. China is the number
hear
one
from
threat
Vivek.
to our country, and every minute that these 8 candidates spend talking about the past instead about the future is time that is just you know who loves
Yeah.
it? Biden loves it,
Yeah.
but China loves it when we're talking about the
Him and
past.
DeSantis are at
As
least
promised,
admitting
we were
that.
going to spend a few questions on it, let people say what they wanted to say, and now, indeed, we are moving on to the subject
The
of
U.S. has committed nearly 77.
Can I speak on this issue? I was
You
kind of
did
involved.
you answered on this.
You did say
answer.
something.
Yeah.
We thought you were done, but you
No, I
please.
wasn't done.
Well, Mike, why don't you
They
say
love
this?
Pence.
Join me
Yeah.
in making a
Hold
commitment
on.
There he
that on
is.
day one you would pardon Donald Trump. I'm the only candidate on the stage.
There he is
courage to
again.
actually say
The realest dude up
that is
there.
how we move our nation
Nobody would
forward.
say it.
I don't know
And
why
turn the
you
page
assume
forward.
that
That's
Donald
exactly
Trump
right.
will be convicted of these crimes.
You should be able to make a commitment. The same justice system that was this
Vivek,
corrupt.
here's the difference between you and me.
Yeah, I'm not a professional politician. That's the difference. Who can answer a question?
I've actually given pardons when I was governor of the state of Indiana. It usually follows a finding of guilt and contrition by the individual that's been convicted. So
How does that apply to Trump?
If I'm president of the United States, we'll give fair consideration to any pardon request. But if I may,
You give fair consideration.
if I may,
Like, you don't realize how corrupt this is.
you know, it's not
Traitor.
about looking back
Traitor.
at January 2021. It's about January 20th, 2017. I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible. I raised
Oh,
my right
God.
hand.
Ronald Reagan reference.
And I took an oath
This is supposed to be a
to
powerful
support and
moment.
defend the Constitution of the United
He's
States.
such an actor.
And it ended with a prayer, so help me God. It was a promise that I made to the American people, but I also made it to my Heavenly Father. Every day for 4 years, I sought to keep that oath. And everyone on this stage needs to make it clear whether or not they'll do the same if they earn this job and the confidence of the American people. Now, look, I've made it clear. I had hoped that the issues surrounding the 2020 election and the controversies around January 6th had not come to this, had not come to criminal proceedings. I would rather they had been resolved by the American people and the American people alone. But no one's above
Well, we
the law.
tried on January 6th.
And President Trump is entitled to the presumption of innocence that every American is entitled to.
But it's pretty obvious
and we
what's
will make
going
sure
on
and
here.
extend that to him. But the American people deserve to know that the president asked
They're
me
so indirect. Like,
in
Vivek
his
is the only
request that I
direct person out
reject
here.
or return votes unilaterally, power that no vice president in American history had ever exercised or taken. He asked me to put him over the Constitution. And I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I had no
Traitor.
right to overturn the election, and Kamala Harris will have no right to overturn the election when we beat them in 2024.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
I really wish
Now
Trump
we
was
are
here.
moving on
This
to
would make
other
things a
issues.
whole lot more interesting.
The U.S. has committed nearly $77 billion in aid to the Ukraine war. The administration is now asking Congress for $24 billion more. Regardless of that, the specifics of that plan, is there anyone on stage who would not support the increase of more funding to Ukraine?
We would
not support it.
Vivek, first person. Vivek.
I would have Europe step up and do their job.
Mr.
At least
Ramaswamy.
DeSantis raised his hand, but he was still like,
But you're saying
Look at
you would
that.
not too, Governor DeSantis?
I will have Europe pull their weight.
But you
Right
would-
now, they're not doing
you
that.
would not support
and I think
more
we need
funding?
to
He's
do
waving
it.
the
And I think
hand.
our
That's so
support
funny.
should be contingent on them doing it. And I would have support in China to be able to take China and do what we need to do with
Vivek's
China.
got it.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States.
That's right, the border.
We are driving Russia further
Or in
into
soil.
China's hands. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat we face. And I find
Facts.
it offensive
They're trying to
that
get rid
we
of the
have
US
professional
dollar. No
politicians
one's
on the
talking about
stage
it.
that will make a pilgrimage to Kyiv, to their Pope, Zelensky, without
Yeah.
doing the same thing for people in Maui or the South
To
Side
Exactly.
of Chicago or Kensington.
What happened to the nationalist ideology?
First,
Like what?
secure our own border instead of somebody
Our own
else's.
borders, our own
and
cities,
the reality is,
crime
this
rates.
is also how we project strength.
See, this is a
and making
nationalist
America
right here.
strong
I like
at
this
home.
guy.
All right, we heard the names. Governor Christie first.
All right, look, I did go to Ukraine, and I went to Ukraine because I wanted to see for myself what Vladimir Putin's army was doing to the free Ukrainian people.
Oh, God.
And let me tell you, I want you all to look around this arena tonight and imagine that every one of these seats was filled. And if every one of them was filled, there would still be 2,500 more children outside to make over 20,000 who have been abducted, stolen, ripped from their mothers and fathers, and brought back to Russia to be programmed to fight their own families. They have gouged out people's eyes, cut off their ears, and
Because they don't want to get nuked.
shot people in the back of the head.
You
men,
arm
and then
Ukraine
got
with those
into
missiles, it's
homes
pointed
and
right at their
raped
country.
The daughters and the wives who were left.
That's their
as
dispute,
widows
nothing with the United
and
States.
orphans. This is the Vladimir Putin. This is the Vladimir Putin.
See, they're going to make Putin not to be the bad guy.
Donald Trump called
Watch.
brilliant and a genius. If we don't stand up against this type of autocratic
raise your
killing
Ukraine flag,
in the
buddy.
world, we will be next.
We will be next. If you eat another donut, you will be next.
You were mentioned.
Governor Haley, we'll come back.
Vice President Pence was mentioned. You get 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, let me be clear. Anybody that thinks that we can't solve the problems here in the United States and be the leader of the free world has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth.
Well, we're not. Literally, it's incorrect. We aren't.
We've done both.
We aren't doing both.
We've been the leader of the free
Admit it.
world and the arsenal of democracy for years.
That's
the
a
Reagan
fallacy.
doctrine years ago made it clear. We said if you're
Years
willing
ago,
to fight
yeah.
the communists on your soil, we'll give you the means to fight them there so our troops don't have to fight them. Vivek, if we do the giveaway that you want to give to Putin to give him his land, it's not going to be too long before he rolls across
That's
a
not what
NATO
he's-
border.
see, they don't
and
understand.
frankly,
They're so
our men and women
delusional.
of our armed forces are going to have to go and fight him.
That's not
I wanna
what they're
let
gonna
the
do.
Ukrainians fight and drive Putin and the Russians back out into Russia.
I want to just
so our
briefly
troops
address
aren't going to have
Pence.
to make that
Vice
fight.
President Pence. I have a newsflash. The USSR does not exist anymore. It fell
doesn't
back
exist.
in 1990.
Did I say
the real
USSR?
threat? You talked about the communists.
Facts.
And the real communists that we have to address
Do you
right
not
now
have any
is the
idea what Vladimir Putin's aims
you
are?
already spoke. Now I actually have something to say.
Vladimir Putin has been
doesn't
saying
want
he
missiles
wants to
pointed at him.
reestablish the old Soviet sphere
You've made
of
your point,
influence.
Vice President.
Now,
Vice
if
President
you
Well, let's not hear it.
insulted
Until it is,
insulted him by calling him
he
a
said.
communist. He is a dictator and a murderer, and the United States of America needs to stand against authoritarianism.
Vivek needs to talk up. You need to talk over him.
Respond.
They don't
the
give him
real
any
threat
time.
we face today is communist China.
Yes,
and we
they
are
control
driving
America.
Russia further into China's arms. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest
They're trying
threat
to
we face.
destabilize the
Nobody
US
either
dollar.
political
Wake
party's
up.
talking about
They're
it.
not talking
And
about
I am the only non-neocon on this stage.
He's the only non-neocon on this stage. That is facts.
To give Russia everything they've got.
Everybody else is a
Give them a
neocon.
promise that
He's right.
Ukraine will never be in NATO, and then somehow
Mr. Vice President.
China will not think about taking Taiwan. We achieve peace through strength.
Mr. Vice
and America needs to stand for freedom.
I'm not with Pence on this one.
Here we go.
I think we need to establish some ground rules
When
here,
we
folks.
hear this bell,
Yes.
that means your time's done.
We're done.
So, Mr. Vice President, we appreciate your aggressiveness here. 30 seconds is 30 seconds.
Not
Mr.
long
Ramaswamy,
enough.
you were mentioned.
Give
You
him
get 30
45
seconds.
to a minute.
So the reality is that today,
What are they booing him for?
Ukraine is not a priority for the United States of America.
Why is he getting booed?
And I think that
Why
the
is he
same
getting
people
booed?
who took us into the Iraq War, the same people who took us into the Vietnam War, you cannot start another no-win war. And I do not want to get to the point where we're sending our military resources abroad
It's the same thing
when
as
we
Vietnam.
could be better using them here at home to protect our own borders.
We need to,
protect the
and we're not
homeland.
doing that.
That will be my top priority in foreign
I
policy.
think we gave you
How can you argue
the
with that?
30
Homeland.
seconds in the rebut. So I do want to get to some other people because everybody, we respect everybody's time here. So, Governor Haley.
Clearly not. You guys love Mike Pence's
did not raise
time.
your hand, meaning that you would support more funding for the Ukraine war. You have said of Governor DeSantis that you
Wow,
didn't appreciate
that's
it when he
crazy. He
initially
would
called it
increase
a
funding for that
territorial
war?
dispute. Why?
First of all, the American president needs to have moral clarity. they need to know the difference between right and wrong. They need to know the difference between good and evil. Right. When you look at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, here you have a pro-American country that was invaded by a thug. So when you want to talk about what has been given to
she's bought
Ukraine,
and sold too.
less than
She's a neoconservative.
3.5% of our defense budget has been given to Ukraine. If you look at the percentages per
billions.
GDP, 11 of the European countries have given more than the U.S. But what's really important is go back to when China and Russia held
on that
hands,
side of the world.
shook hands before the Olympics, and named themselves unlimited partners. A win for Russia is a win for China. We have to know that. Ukraine is the first line of defense
how
for
is she
us.
getting?
And
how
the
is the
problem
banter
that
applauding
Vivek doesn't
her?
understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. What you do instead is you have the backs of your friends. Ukraine is the front line of defense. Putin has said if Russia, once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war.
No,
We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today.
So delusional.
He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the Russian ambassador suddenly died. This guy is a murderer. And
again,
you are
the USSR does not exist anymore. Newsflash, they don't exist. It just shows how far off these guys are. Like, it's crazy. These are our only options. Like,
career on the boards of Lockheed and Raytheon.
I'm not
but
on
the fact of the matter,
and
Boeing came off of it, but you've been pushing this lie. You've been pushing this lie all week, Nikki.
You want to go and defund Israel? You want to
okay, let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now.
Why are they applauding her? Even the crowd's delusional. They don't even know right and wrong.
So the reality is,
it's like woman power.
No foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that you all have.
Clearly, theirs doesn't work.
Learn from those and apply those to protect our homeland, Nikki.
Israel
that is the
needs
answer.
America. America needs Israel.
Okay, Governor DeSantis, you were mentioned in the territorial dispute. Not only
no, it's not a territorial dispute either.
President of the United States, your first obligation is to defend our country and its people, and that means you're sending all this money, but you're not doing what we need to do to secure our own border. We have tens of thousands of people
we're not worried about our own
being killed because we're not.
We're not doing both. Exactly.
And so I am going to declare it a national emergency. I'm not going to send troops to Ukraine, but I am going to send them to our southern border. When these drug pushers are bringing fentanyl across the border, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to use force, and we're going to leave them stone cold dead.
We're actually going to move on to China. We're going to talk about China.
Okay.
That was good.
China has the biggest navy in the world, the biggest army in the world. Now they have warships off the coast of Alaska. They are threatening Taiwan. In coming years, China will have 1,500 nuclear warheads, it's believed.
They already control the U.S. What are we worried about?
Two sailors accused of spying for China within our military. So the question is, how would you deter China as a president, Bergen?
Check them out.
Well, this is the #1 issue we're facing, and of course we haven't been talking about it, and we act like that letting Russia win in the Ukraine is like a gimme as opposed to a gift to China. Russia has become China's gas station. But how would we do it? The Biden administration is a complete fail. China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day, more than any other country in the world. They do not even have all the food they need to feed everybody in that country, so they don't have energy security or food security. But the Biden administration sends Blinken, Yellen over there. They're over there. They don't even bring up energy because they're too busy trying to kill the U.S. energy here. And what we need to do is not meetings, not press releases, because something that would send a lot more than a press release is actually Harpoon missiles. We need anti-ship missiles on Taiwan. The way that you have a war never start, which is the goal, the way you have peace through strength, is that you actually have strength. You actually have deterrence. And what we have in what we've got going on in Ukraine is an example of when deterrence fail. What is an example there of Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the fact that he green-lighted Putin moving into Ukraine, and then now they see weakness, and when they see weakness, they make a move. And we have to be strong, and we have to be strong both in Ukraine, and we can solve the southern border. Absolutely, we can do that, because guess what? There's only 19,855 authorized people for the Border Patrol, but they're not all staff because the Biden administration doesn't enforce law enforcement. But Biden administration wanted to put 87 87,000 people in the IRS, as opposed to giving the money in this for what we need to
handle our
Border
domestic
Patrol.
issues before we get cocky here.
Senator Scott, on China, that same question.
Can I speak about China?
Let's fire the 87,000 IRS agents and hire or double the number of Border Patrol agents. I just left Yuma, Arizona about 2 weeks ago. The most pressing need of the American people from a national security standpoint is our southern border. It has led to the death of 70,000 Americans because of fentanyl, plus 6 million illegal crossings since President Biden has taken office, and 200 people on our national security watch list have been caught at our border. How many have not been caught at our southern border? If we just spend $10 billion, we could finish the wall. For $5 billion more, we could have the military-grade technology to surveil our southern border to stop the flow of fentanyl.
They can print that money right now. They just don't want to.
70,000 Americans a year.
And they're also able to tax it out of us too.
Priority of this government, and as the next president of the United States, I will make that border wall complete.
There are many more questions.
I agree with most of Tim Scott's points. I just don't think he has what it takes to be a leader of the country,
It's not
for
just
real.
the 70,000 from fentanyl. We've lost 200,000 people to overdoses since Biden took office. That's 300 people a day. We're taking mass casualties, and that's a statistic, but these are sons and daughters, nieces and nephews that we're losing. We've got North Dakota troops down there flying night helicopter missions from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop these transnational criminal organizations. They've got better funding on their side than we've got on our side.
Speaking of which, Governor Hutchinson, images from earlier this month, Governor Hutchinson,
with Mexico,
Vice President Pence, images from earlier this month. Vice President Pence, it really doesn't help. I'm asking a question. Earlier this month, images showed suspected cartel members crossing into Texas with rifles. Do you consider this an invasion? Would you authorize lethal force along that border?
There would be lethal force used by the Border Patrol, law enforcement as needed to protect the border. Absolutely. When you look at the military has to be used for intelligence gathering purposes. This is not unusual. Whenever I was in the Bush administration, we went down there and met with President Vicente Fox of Mexico and asked his help in going after the cartels. And he looked at me and said, they're a problem to us as well. And so we joined together and we took down the Ariana Felix brothers leading the Tijuana cartel. And that made a difference. Ramon was shot and killed and Ben Amin was captured. Cooperation makes a difference. We cannot be successful going against the cartel unless we bring in Mexico as a partner. We have to use economic pressure to accomplish that. President Obrador has not been helpful, and we have to use economic pressure that this administration is not using. The rule of law has to matter on both sides of it.
Okay.
This is critical. I've done it. We know what needs to be done. The military has to be limited in its use. When after 9/11, we had the global war on terror, and guess what?
Next.
We protected the border at the same time. You can do both.
Okay,
Well,
let's go to
we
Governor
aren't.
DeSantis. So, as president, would you support sending U.S. Special Forces over the border into Mexico to take out fentanyl labs, to take out drug cartel operations? Would you support that kind of American military use?
Yes, and I will do it on day one. Here's the thing. The cartels are killing tens of thousands of our fellow citizens. You want to talk about a country in decline? You have the cartels controlling a lot of part of your southern border. We have to reestablish the rule of law, and we have to defend our people. The President of the United States has got to use all available powers as Commander-in-Chief to protect our country and to protect the people. So when they're coming across, yes, we're going to use lethal force. Yes, we reserve the right to operate. How many more tens of thousands are we going to let to die? I am sick. I've met angel moms throughout this country. I met a lady in
I think
Texas
everybody
named
agrees
Tracy,
on this issue pretty
and
much.
her son.
I would be shocked if somebody
one
said,
Percocet
"Sure, let's let them on in."
that was laced
Like,
with fentanyl,
If anybody does, it's going to be
die.
Nikki Haley.
That is happening all across this country because of the poison that they are bringing in. So as president, would I use force? Would I treat them as foreign terrorist organizations? You're darn right I would.
You know,
You're darn right.
Vice President Pence, why would you be better at this issue than Governor DeSantis? Governor DeSantis on the campaign trail refers to your administration as not finishing the wall.
Right. Look, we secured the southern border of the United States of America and reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%. When Joe Biden took over, he threw open the southern border of the United States, and the wave of humanity, the wave of fentanyl that's been eloquently described here is a wave of human tragedy across this country. But Martha, you began this evening talking about who is best prepared to be the next president of the United States. And I have to tell you, with all humility, I was there when we negotiated through the government shutdown and got the funding available to build the wall. I was negotiating on Capitol Hill around the clock. I negotiated the Remain in Mexico policy on behalf of the President of the United States. And Asa, you're so right. It's because we used economic pressure to bring the Mexicans to the table, and they allowed us to have people wait in Mexico while they applied for asylum and ended asylum abuse overnight. We got the Mexicans to deploy their National Guard to their southern border and to our southern border as never before. And I want to promise you, as President of the United States of America, I will engage Mexico the exact same way, and we will partner with the Mexican military, and we will hunt down and destroy the cartels that are claiming lives in the United States of America.
Okay, thank you. Another issue that is related to this is that almost 7 million migrants have crossed this border, our southern border, during the Biden administration. So, Governor Christie, what would you do about the 7 million who are here? How would you handle them? What would you do?
Look, Martha, the first thing we need to do is to stop any more from coming. That's the first thing we need to do. Then the next thing we need to do with the folks that are here is to, again, as we've talked about all night tonight, we have to have law and order in this country. We have to enforce the law. And what that means is to make sure that people who come here illegally are not rewarded for being here illegally. We have so many wonderful people from around the world who are waiting in line, following the law to try to come here and pursue the American dream. And those people are waiting and waiting and waiting because we haven't dealt with the problem of the folks who are here. We have to have them detained. We have to make sure that they are not rewarded for having broken the law. And one last thing on this fentanyl issue. With China, we can't take our eye off of that ball. Right. Yes, it's important that we secure the border. Very important, as I just said. But China is sending these chemicals to these drug cartels for them to create the fentanyl that is killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens. The Chinese are engaging in an act of war against us, killing our citizens.
China manufactures a lot of drugs that are internationally shipped throughout the world in a global market.
And to try to straighten that relationship out, because if we don't, we're going to lose more and more of our citizens.
I just want to clarify, would you send those people back?
Of course. You'd have to.
We don't have enough room in those prisons.
That Americans care about. Next up, we're going to talk about the crisis in education. Lines for reading and math for 15-year-olds and 13-year-olds. Governor DeSantis, you would eliminate, you said, the Department of Education. But as president, would you still have a responsibility to fix this crisis as we see it?
Absolutely. The decline in education is one of the major reasons why our country is in decline. We need education in this country, not indoctrination in this country. And in Florida, we stood up for what was right. First, we had schools open during COVID, and a lot of the problems that we've seen are because these lockdown states lock their kids out of school for a year, year and a half. That was wrong. We stood up. I took a lot of fire for that. I was pilloried by the media, but I stood for our kids. And as president, I'll stand for you and your kids as well. But we have to make sure that what our schools are doing is focusing on solid academics. In Florida, we eliminated critical race theory from our K-12 schools. We eliminated gender ideology from our K through 12 schools. And we have elevated the importance of American civics in teaching our kids about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. As president, I'm going to lead an effort to increase civic understanding and knowledge of our Constitution. We cannot be graduating students that don't have any foundation in what it means to be an American.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
That's pretty good.
Mr. Ramaswamy, hold on, Senator Scott. You've said that the Department of Education, the FBI, the ATF, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the IRS, the Department of Commerce, many of these should not exist.
That's correct.
So, to the education question, how would you deal with the crisis?
So look, we have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education.
Yep.
Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Allow any parent to choose where they send their kids to school. End the teachers' unions at the local level to allow public schools to compete. And then revive our national identity where every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country.
That's already the case in 13 states, actually. I had to in Kentucky when I graduated high school.
There's part of education
I do agree
policy
with
that
that.
also rests with the family. I didn't grow up in money. But you know the word privilege gets used a lot? Well, you know what? I did have the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. And I want every kid to enjoy that. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness.
And feminism.
And I think that goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
Governor Haley has said...
I love it.
Governor Haley has said that biological boys playing in girls' sports is the women's issue of our time. You said that even though you signed a ban on this in North Dakota, that there hadn't been one instance where it was actually needed. Are you saying that you think that too much is made of this issue?
No, I'm saying in North Dakota we made a priority of protecting women's sports, and we've done that in our state. But I would absolutely do that. But I do think when we start talking about education and we think that we're going to have a federal government one-size-fits-all, we're just completely losing track of the fact that education differs by state. Some school districts are doing a fantastic job, some less so. But the idea that every school district in the state and every teacher is somehow indoctrinating people is just false. You know, when I was building a company from scratch, you know, with small town kids, and we went, you know, grew up in a town of 300, but we built a global company in 132 countries with over 100,000 customers. We listened to those customers. We spent time with them. We talked to them. We did that. And as governor, well, education is one of the biggest part of a state budget.
He's not going to win, but it's pretty cool seeing someone in a small town like that. He's completely different.
The student finds out, I'm going to go to every class with them. I don't sit and lecture school districts how to do it. I go and see the experience. And there's a lot of things that have to change. But what needs to change in education is it's innovation. We're doing it the same way we did it 50 years ago with innovation, not regulation. I would get rid of the Department of Education. I would give block grants to schools, but I'd give them on merit based on who's doing the most innovative. I just got done holding the 7th annual Governor's Conference on Innovation Education. You should see what the people are doing when you cut loose the red tape, get the burden off their back. They care. Teachers in this country, the vast majority of them care about those kids. They're working in low-paying jobs, and they're fighting for those kids and their families.
Governor Haley, you said that this was the women's issue of our time.
First, I'll tell you, as you know, as a parent, the one thing you want is for your child to have a better life than you did. And we can talk about all of these things, and there's a lot of crazy woke things happening in schools, but we've got to get these kids reading. If a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we need to make sure we bring in reading remediation all over this country. We need transparency in the classroom because parents should never have to wonder what's being said or taught to their children in the classroom. Parents need to be deciding which schools their kids go to because they know best. And let's put vocational classes back into the high schools. Let's teach our kids to build things again. When we do that and we allow that innovation, that's when it'll get back. And yes, I will always say I'm going to fight for girls all day long because strong girls become strong women become strong leaders, and biological boys don't belong in the locker rooms of any of our girls.
Another point of
We're going
education.
to start the lightning round, and the first
Cannot
question is going to
disagree with
go
that, or
to you, Vice
you can get
President.
off
So
the
this is a
stage.
lightning round of questions, 30-second answers, please. President Biden will be 82 years old on Inauguration Day. Nearly 70% of Americans say that he is too old to serve. Should presidents have to pass a mental and physical
It's not age,
test
that's for sure.
in order to serve, Vice President Pence?
Well, it might be a good idea to have everybody in Washington, D.C. pass a mental and
If that's the case.
But 30 seconds, no. The American people can make those judgments. But let me say, I'm running for president of the United States because we don't need a president who's too old, and we don't need a president who's too young. We need a president who's been there. We need a president who knows how Congress works, how the White House works.
It helps,
how
but it's
states
not
work.
everything.
And on this education issue, Martha, I was fighting against No Child Left Behind when Republicans
We need
were
someone
doubling
who's
the
not going to
Department
give
of
a morning in
Education.
America speech.
I'll also shut down the
He's
federal
so
Department
deluded,
of
he doesn't
Education. When I
realize
was
that the
governor,
earth and the world
we
is as
doubled
bad as
the
it is. He
size
thinks
of
that,
the largest school
oh,
choice
it's
program in
jolly
America,
morning in America.
and we'll
It's
give
not.
school choice to every family in America when I'm in the White House.
This is a lightning round, Mr. Ramaswamy. I think you were mentioned there. You're 38. You're the youngest on the stage. You've said, and you just said, you want a civics test or public service for those under 25 to be able to vote. So the question is, do you want a mental acuity test for presidents over 75?
I believe in the people of this country to tell the difference between somebody who's an automaton and somebody who's actually a thinking agent in the White House, which we don't have in there today. And I will
Pretty
tell you, I want
obvious.
to address Vice President Pence's comment. I think we do need somebody of a different generation to lead this nation forward. Look at the way I've run this campaign. Going to the south side of Chicago, to Kensington, in the middle of Philadelphia, where traditional Republican candidates don't go. We have an opportunity to build a multi-ethnic, working-class majority to deliver a landslide, and I think I'm the only candidate in this race, young or old, black or white, to bring all of those voters along to deliver a Reagan 1980 revolution. We're going to do it in 2024.
Same question to you, Governor.
Presidential election.
I don't like all the Reagan references, but
I will answer that.
30 seconds.
30-second quick
he's
answer.
attacking. He's attacking Vivek.
Everybody's going to get a chance to get
Listen,
control
we're
of
getting
this debate.
control of the debate. This is a lightning round, not rolling thunder. Governor Hutchinson, you have 30 seconds on the same question.
Why do they give them
On
30
education,
seconds?
first
That's
of
not
all,
enough
look at
time.
Arkansas. We have to compete with China. I built computer science education. We led the nation in computer science education, going from 1,100 students to 23,000 students taking it. This is how you
look
compete
like you
with
could take
China.
apart a
As
computer.
President of the United States, I will make sure we go from 51% of our schools offering computer science to every school in rural areas and urban areas offering computer science for the benefit of our kids, and we can compete with China in terms of technology.
This is going to go to this is coming to you. We're trying to do a quick round of different topics here. So, Senator Scott, faith is on decline in this country. You talked about it a little bit before tonight. So, is there a role for a president of the United States in changing that? What would you do to change that?
Well, our nation was founded upon the Judeo-Christian values that has made this the greatest nation on God's green earth. I'm a big believer in Ephesians 3:20 that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or imagine. Our responsibility should be to model the behavior we want others to follow. On education, the only way we change education in this nation is to break the backs of the teachers' unions. They are standing in the doorhouse of our kids, locking them into failing schools and locking them out of the greatest future they could have.
Get rid of them.
As President, Governor DeSantis, would you support some mandatory military service for all Americans?
I think it should be voluntary. I'm somebody that volunteered to serve, inspired by September 11th, and I deployed to Iraq alongside U.S. Navy SEALs in places like Fallujah, Ramadi. And it's something that I think has taught me, you know, when you go in that type of environment, anything you have, your personal agenda, you check it at the door. You go there, and it's about focusing on the mission above all else. And guys come together, and they get it done. And that's how I would view being the President of the United States. It's not about me. It's not about all these other side issues. My sole focus will be on your future and reversing this country's decline.
Okay, now for something a little out of this world, and this is for you, Governor Christie. Do you believe that the recent spike in UFO encounters...
Really?
I get the UFO question?
Yeah, you do.
Come on,
What are you talking about UFOs for?
But, okay, we've been hearing a lot of... We've been hearing a lot of testimony in Congress, and people are taking this a lot more seriously.
Real.
And we're hearing that, you know, there are things going on that people aren't aware of. So, if you were president, Governor Christie, would you level with the American people about what the government knows about these possible encounters?
Martha, and especially coming from a woman from New Jersey, I think it's horrible that just because I'm from New Jersey, you asked me about unidentified flying objects and Martians. We're different, but we're not that different. Look, of course, the job of the President of the United States is to level with the American people about everything. The job of the President of the United States is to stand for truth. The job of the President of the United States is to be a role model for our children and our grandchildren. And so whether it was UFOs or this problem of education, and Tim's right, by the way, and I started this in 2010 by going right after the teachers' unions in New Jersey and drove them down to an all-time low popularity rating because they were putting themselves before our kids. That is the biggest threat to our country, not UFOs.
Okay, so we all can agree
well,
upon
coming
that.
up, we've got closing arguments, plus right after the debate, Hannity is live from the spin room right here in the Fiserv Forum with reaction from all the candidates.
Yeah, it's kind of boring at this point.
As soon as they step off the stage, we'll be back after
Like I
this.
said, we'd be a whole lot better with Trump
20
here.
years ago, 70% of American adults said they were extremely proud to be an American. That number has now plummeted to just 39%. In his pitch to get to the Oval Office, President Reagan called America the shining city on a hill.
Another Reagan
beacon of
reference.
hope
What's up with Ronald
and
Reagan?
optimism.
So in your closing statement tonight, please tell American voters why you are the person who can inspire this nation to a better day. These are 45 seconds, and we begin with Governor Burgum.
I understand why America's hurting. Biden's inflation is choking us. I grew up in a small town. My dad died when I was a freshman in high school. My mom, widow of 3, went back to work. Every job I had growing up was one where I took a shower at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. Our cities are less safe because of the fentanyl pouring into this country. Our economy is being crushed by Biden's energy policies, which are raising the cost of every product you buy, not just the gasoline at the pump. One thing that I'll do as president, I'll secure the border. I'll get this economy sprinting, not crawling like it is right now. And I would say that other thing is for sure, when I'm on a horseback in the Badlands of North Dakota, it looks like the horizon is just limitless. And when you can almost see beyond that horizon, you can see that this great country, our future is unlimited. But we've got to focus on innovation, not regulation. We've got to cut the red tape. We've got to drive ourselves forward. The way we win the Cold War with China is by growing our economy and through innovation. And as president, I will bring out the best of America. I will improve every American life.
Well, we hope you're back on your horse soon, Governor.
I'll give him a 6 out of 10 for that
Governor
one.
Hutchinson?
Our nation is in trouble. And it's in trouble because of failed leadership.
He reminds me of Forrest
And
Gump.
the solution is not 4 more
My
years
mom
of
said
Joseph
my life
Biden.
is like a box of
The
chocolates.
solution is not 4 more years of Donald Trump. The solution
Not you.
is new leadership that can bring bold ideas to America and to bring out the best of America. A president's #1 responsibility is to bring out the best of our people. That's what Ronald Reagan did. And he did it with optimism and hope for our country, with consistent conservatism. That's exactly what I bring. As president, I'll bring out the best of America in terms of individual responsibility, building our economy, in terms of securing our border, enforcing the rule of law. I'll bring out the best of America in terms of our national character, our faith, and our hope for the future. Join in this fight. ACE2024.com.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
.com. Not on social media, but .com.
Thank you.
Get me on Skype.
I was a disillusioned young man
5 out of
growing
10.
up in a single-parent household, mired in poverty. I wondered if the American dream was real for a kid like me. I can stand before you today and say the dream is alive, it is well, and it is healthy.
No, it is
I have
not.
the good fortune of a mom who works 16-hour days, making sure we have food on our tables. She taught me that if you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men. I'm Tim Scott. I'm asking you for your vote, and if you're in Iowa, I'm asking you to caucus for me. You can go to votetimscott.com for more information or to make a contribution.
4 out of 10.
Governor
That was not
Christie.
very good.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Martha. Look, everybody on this stage wants to be the next president of the United States. And the only way that's going to happen is if we beat Joe Biden. I'm the only one on this stage who's ever beaten a Democratic incumbent in an election.
You're the only one that
I did
left
it
with
in
an
a deep
8%
blue
approval
state,
rating.
being outspent 3-1. Beating a Democratic incumbent is not easy. The last Democratic incumbent president who was defeated was Jimmy Carter. And he was defeated by a conservative governor from a blue state who knew how to get results, who stood for the truth, who cared about accountability, and stood strong and hard against waste. Those are the very things that I did in my 8 years as governor of New Jersey, and it's exactly what I'll do as president of the United States. Believe me, the Democrats want some other nominee who's never beaten the Democratic incumbent. I'm the one who can win this race, and if you give me the chance, I will restore our country by winning it.
Thank you. Governor Haley.
I'll give him a 6 out of 10 for that. Not too bad.
Several weeks ago, I dropped my husband, Michael, a combat veteran from Afghanistan, off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they had never been, all in the name of protecting America. If they are willing to protect us from there, we should be willing to fight for America here. I will beat Joe Biden, and he knows that. I will strengthen our economy, and we'll bring this inflation down. We will put transparency in the classroom. We will secure our borders. We will have the backs of our law enforcement, and we will make sure we have a strong national security. And once again, we will make sure we have an America that is strong and proud. We have a country to save. Join us. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and let's get it done.
Vice President Pence.
I'll give her a 6 out of 10.
Thank you, Brad and Martha, for this evening. It's an honor to be here. Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, their war on energy, runaway spending that launched the worst inflation in 40 years, a crisis at our southern border, an assault on our values and liberties, and the American people have had enough. But I know we can bring it back. But different times call for different leadership. The Republican Party owes the American people a choice. Proven leadership at the national level that knows how to move a conservative agenda forward. We proved in the Trump-Pence years you can turn this country around faster than you can imagine. And I have faith we will again. Because I have faith in the American people. The good, decent, hard-working, faith-filled, idealistic people of this country. And I have faith that God is not done with America yet. And if we will renew our faith in one another and renew our faith in Him who has ever guided this nation since we arrived on these wilderness shores, I know the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come.
Seemed like a performance to me.
I was born in 1985, and I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion in 1776. And this is our moment to revive those common ideals. God,
so real.
God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, he got an ovation there. 8 out of 10. That was really good. That was inspiring too. There he is with that weird smile.
Governor?
This is our time for choosing. We will send Joe Biden back to his basement, and we will reverse the decline of this country. I'm a blue-collar kid. I work minimum wage jobs to be able to make ends meet. I understand the importance of the American dream, and I know how that slipped away from so many millions of Americans. We'll restore it. I'm a veteran who served in Iraq. I know what it means to put service above self. I'm also a dad and a husband to 6'5" and 3-year-old. I understand the importance of protecting
6'5".
parents' rights and the well-being of our children. In Florida, we showed it could be done. I made promises, and I delivered on all of those promises. 2024 is make or break. We're not getting a mulligan, no excuses. I will get the job done, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you all.
Well, we want to say thank you.
I'll give him a 7 out of 10 there.
Thank you to all the candidates on the stage tonight, and thank you to Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think Vivek won that one.
We will see you on the